Now, as it happens, we had interviewed Willie Fraser. He recorded an interview at about 3:45 because he didn't think he would be available to come live on the programme at this time. So we're going to play that interview for you now. And the first question I put it to him was, as a British citizen, why wouldn't he go to London and protest at the Houses of Parliament or at 10 Downing Street to David Cameron over something happening in the British jurisdiction?
Well, first thing, the British Parliament is not who finds this offensive, the flag. Secondly, it's not about the flag, the reason we're coming down to Dublin. The flag issue has taken it over. It was never about the flag, and it was planned a number of weeks ago. It was about the issue, the fact that the Irish government will not come and answer the questions that we've been trying to get from them for 10 years.
What questions are those?
Well, it's in relation to, for an example, the 500 weapons that came out of the army barracks in Dublin in the 70s and was given to the IRA in the border by members of the Irish Army at the behest of the Irish government. Now, that's official paperwork, and that is official from the government. We want to know, why are they calling for inquiries into the likes of Bloody Sunday whenever they did the like of that? Simple as. Now, that's only an example, but this Bloody Sunday, 200 million spent on it. They've now got a special team of police officers set up to investigate for a witch hunt against the paratroopers who carried out their duty on Bloody Sunday.
It wasn't their duty to murder people.
You tell me why then there is a specialist team set up to create a witch hunt on the soldiers on Bloody Sunday. Why there's a call for an inquiry into the Pat Finucane murder? What's so special about Pat Finucane? He's no better a man, and maybe he wouldn't have laced my father's shoes or half the people in this country's shoes that was killed. So what makes him so special that there has to be an inquiry into him? Which part of it's been provocative?
Having a march on Leinster House, I think you know full well at this stage how provocative it is.
I'm having a protest. I'm having a protest. It's not a march, it's a protest. And I wouldn't be having it, and the people wouldn't be going down if the Irish government recognised the wrongdoings that they carried out over the years while calling for inquiries in the north. If they were to recognise the fact that they are neglecting their duty to speak to us, we wouldn't need to be going down to Dublin.
All right, we'll leave it with you there. One last thing, Willie Fraser, can I ask you? I believe that the international media has turned up in Belfast today. Many of them have been interviewing you. Are you enjoying all of this attention?
No, I'm not enjoying all this attention. If I was enjoying all this attention, I could have joined a political party years ago, and I could have got paid and went around the world doing nothing. I refused it. I've been offered jobs at large amounts of money to tell the story of the conflict in Northern Ireland, but in a positive manner. I turned it down because I said there's only one way to tell the story of Northern Ireland, and that's the right way. And no amount of money will ever pay me to sell out my dead or my community. And that's the difference in myself and a number of other so-called representatives who are speaking for victims when they're not speaking for victims.
That was Willie Fraser, who I spoke to at about 3:45 today, before all the confusion arose as to whether this protest is going to go ahead on Saturday or not. And we had him, as you may have heard, just on at 5 o'clock again, confirming that yes, he intends to have the protest and that he's in negotiations with the Gardaí as to how to conduct it properly. Mary Lou McDonald, Deputy Leader of Sinn Féin, is with us. Mary Lou, thank you very much for coming on the programme with us now. But do you think maybe has the time come to, instead of just being nice to Willie Fraser, that the Gardaí should say, this is not a good idea, we would prefer if you didn't come down to Dublin?
Well, I think that Willie Fraser is clearly revelling in his notoriety at the minute and the attention that he's getting. You put the question to him. I think it would be better all round if Willie Fraser and the protesters in Belfast called off their protest and respected the democracy that Willie so clearly lauded in his conversation with you. I suppose the Gardaí and the authorities are in a position that you cannot deny somebody the democratic right to protest, and I understand that, and I think that is a valuable freedom that we must protect. But at the same time, I mean, we've said it all throughout the last number of weeks. We've been calling on unionism, loyalism, the UVF, the leadership of the unionist parties, to call off these protests, which have descended into near anarchy in some parts of the streets of Belfast. There's small numbers of people have been out, but they've caused enormous distress, not least in East Belfast, not least to the community of the Short Strand, and they should just stop. And they need to just recognise that the decision in respect of the Union flag was one arrived at democratically. It wasn't foisted upon anyone. They have to accept, and Willie and all others have to accept, that the Orange State is gone, that Belfast is no longer a unionist-dominated city, it's a shared city, and that the manner in which flags and emblems are used and displayed has to just recognise that reality. So I would prefer that this protest would not take place in Dublin. I think rather than postponing the event, Willie Fraser and others should have simply abandoned it. And more to the point, I think those who have taken to the streets in Belfast, who have talked a lot about their democratic rights, need to recognise that a democratic decision was taken and need to accept that just as their British identity is so dear to them, that there are others, their neighbours, other people living within the community in the city that they share who don't share that identity. We resolved these matters in the Good Friday Agreement. There was explicit references in respect of flags and emblems. And the decision taken by the Council on the 3rd of December arose from long controversy and debate, an equality impact assessment from the Equality Commission. It did not fall out of the sky. And it is a decision and a compromise that is more than fair and respectful to unionism and to unionists that live in Belfast.
OK, one final thing to you, Mary Lou. Willie Fraser, as well as raising the issue of the flag, went into considerable detail about wrongs he felt that haven't been addressed in relation to investigating the murders of loyalists, of unionists. And, of course, he made reference as well, I think in a way that many people might be upset to Pat Finucane.
Yes.
But does he have a point that perhaps there doesn't seem to have been as much interest in investigating atrocities at which Protestant people suffered at the hands of?
I don't think that's fair, and I heard what he had to say about Pat Finucane, and he posed the question, what's so special about Pat? Well, of course, you can't. We have always argued against any kind of hierarchy of victims, and a life is a life, and a loss is a loss to any family or to any community. But what marks Pat Finucane out is the fact that his case opens the whole can of worms that was the collusion between the British state, the RUC as it was, the army, and loyalist paramilitary groups. That was a matter, that was British policy in Ireland, and Britain was part of the war that happened on the streets of the 6 counties. So that's what marks out Finucane. And at the time that there was agreement that there would be an inquiry into the death of Pat Finucane, it was also agreed that other cases would be investigated. Rosemary Nelson, for instance, who your listeners will know was another human rights lawyer, but also Billy Wright, and also the deaths of Buchanan and Breen, 2 former RUC men. And on the back of that, the Southern government, the Dublin government, established the Smithick Tribunal. So it's not fair, and Willie knows it, to say that this has all been one-way traffic. What is fair to say is that very often those who say that they want the truth and they want the full story simply want to focus, for instance, on the activities of the IRA, for instance, but don't want the full picture of who exactly executed the war, who exactly the combatant groups were, and what exactly in particular the role of the British state was. I agree with Willie on one solitary thing, and it's this, that we do indeed need to deal with the past. And everybody, be they Republican or Unionist, loyalist or nationalist, is entitled to argue for the truth and for some form of closure or reconciliation, call it what you will. But I tell you this, Matt, we will only ever do that once we fully accept, all of us, the new era, the new ethos, which is an ethos of equality, full equality. And that cuts both ways. It means that, for instance, our councillors Sinn Féin councillors and Belfast City Council went into the council chamber last year, the year of the British Royal Jubilee, and voted through funding for their unionist communities and neighbours who wish to celebrate that event, which means little to a nationalist or Republican, but which is so dearly held by unionism and loyalism.
Okay.
And our people did that. So it cuts both ways. There now has to be recognition that Belfast is a shared city, that the North is a shared space, that we live together on a small island. And yes, we need to forge a new future, but we will only do that if we are on the level with each other and sincerely embrace and don't feel threatened by equality.
Equality,
and
indeed. Lou McDonald.
in a time warp now needs to come to an end.